I never thought I'd find myself in this situation, but here I am, staring down the barrel of a betrayal that feels like a shot to the gut. My name is Mark, and I've been married to Lisa for over 10 years. We have a 7-year-old son, Ryan, who idolizes his baseball coach, Brad. Little did I know that admiration would soon morph into something far more sinister. At first, everything seemed fine. I'd come home from work and Lisa would be there, bustling around the kitchen, prepping dinner while chatting with me about her day. It was the kind of comfortable routine that I thought was the backbone of a happy marriage. But then, something changed. Lisa started spending more time at the gym, which I initially thought was great. She had always struggled with her weight, and I supported her efforts to get fit. But the hours began stretching into evenings, and she often came home with a glint in her eye that didn't sit right. I began to notice little things that felt off. Her phone buzzed constantly, and she became more protective of it, often stepping out of the room to take calls. When I asked her about it, she brushed me off, saying it was just her friends from the gym checking in. I wanted to believe her, I really did. I wanted to trust Lisa because she was the mother of my child, and the woman I thought I knew inside and out. But that glint, the one that used to be warmth, was replaced by something colder, more elusive. Then came the day I stumbled upon a string of messages while looking for my charger in our bedroom. Her phone was sitting on the bedside table with the screen unlocked, and as I picked it up, my heart raced. There it was, flirty banter between Lisa and Brad, filled with inside jokes and emojis. I read through a few messages, my mind reeling. They were talking about meeting at a bar, and one message even hinted at plans for a night of fun. My stomach dropped. I confronted her that evening after Ryan went to bed. I tossed her phone onto the kitchen table, feeling like I was holding a grenade that could detonate any second. Care to explain this? I demanded, trying to keep my voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions threatening to spill over. Lisa froze, her expression shifting from surprise to indignation. "Mark, it's nothing, just harmless flirting," she snapped, but I could see the cracks forming. I pushed further, my anger morphing into desperation as she scrambled to deny it, each lie compounding upon the last. "You're overreacting, it's just a joke, you know how guys are." But I wasn't buying it. I could feel my heart racing, anger and betrayal coursing through me like a tidal wave. I demanded to know how long this had been going on, and her answers were vague, filled with excuses that sounded rehearsed. Every lie she told felt like a stab to my heart. I had trusted her, had believed in our marriage, and now I felt like a fool. The emotional aftermath was brutal. It was like a switch had been flipped in my mind. Shock morphed into a heavy sadness, followed by a surge of rage. How could she do this to us, to Ryan? I spent sleepless nights replaying every moment, every conversation, every subtle change in her behavior like a detective hunting for a clue. I had all the evidence I needed, but the reality of it felt crushing. My world was crumbling and the betrayal felt like a weight I couldn't shake off. As I processed the whirlwind of emotions, I realized I needed to make a decision, a choice about how to move forward. I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was fighting for my son, the innocent victim in this chaos. I wanted to shield Ryan from the fallout of his mother's choices. I contemplated what our future might look like, considering whether I should try to repair this broken marriage or start anew. In the depths of all this hurt, I found a flicker of clarity. I didn't want to remain in a loveless marriage, tethered to someone who had shattered my trust. I needed to act, not just for myself, but for my son's future too. This was more than just revenge. It was about ensuring that Ryan had the best life possible, free from the toxicity of our unraveling relationship. What I didn't realize then was just how deep my resolve would be tested and where my path would inevitably lead. I was on the brink of a battle that would shape our futures in ways I could never imagine. Days following my confrontation with Lisa felt like walking through a thick fog. I was consumed by a mixture of anger, sadness, and a desperate need for clarity. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was living in a warped reality, where betrayal had become the norm and trust was nothing but a memory. Ryan noticed that something was off. He ask why Mommy had been so distant and why I looked so sad. I would smile and tell him everything was fine, even though I felt like my heart was breaking. I didn't want him to see the chaos swirling just below the surface. I wanted to protect him, to keep his world intact for as long as I could. But inside, I was still grappling with the aftermath of Lisa's betrayal, and the emotional toll it was taking on me was staggering. Every day, I replayed our last conversation in my mind, dissecting her words, trying to find some semblance of truth in her lies. I couldn't help but wonder how long she'd been hiding her feelings for Brad. Was it just physical? Did she care for him in ways she hadn't cared for me? I felt like a fool, and the bitterness of that realization was hard to swallow. Despite the storm brewing within me, I started putting together a plan. I would confront Lisa again, but this time I'd go in prepared. I needed to know the full extent of her betrayal before making any decisions, so I took it upon myself to dig deeper. I began to watch her carefully and discreetly. It felt wrong, like I was invading her privacy, but I needed answers. I followed her one afternoon when she said she was going to the gym. Instead, she drove to a bar, a dimly lit, out-of-the-way spot that I'd never heard her mention before. My heart raced as I parked a little distance away, watching her walk into the establishment, her heels clicking against the pavement. I felt a mix of anger and heartbreak as I realized she was probably meeting Brad there. The thought twisted in my gut like a knife. I waited, trying to calm my racing thoughts. I felt like a detective watching a crime unfold, and the longer I sat there, the more certain I became that this was not just some passing fling. I took out my phone and snapped a few pictures through the window, my hands shaking with adrenaline. I didn't want to believe it, but I needed proof, something concrete to hold onto when I confronted her again. After what felt like an eternity, I saw them together, laughing, leaning into each other in a way that felt almost intimate. The sight burned into my memory, fueling my anger. I didn't want my son to be caught in the crossfire of our messy lives, but I knew that I couldn't let this continue without confronting her again. I had to make a choice, and I couldn't do that without knowing the full truth. That evening, I sat at the kitchen table, the scent of leftover pizza filling the air as I waited for Lisa to return home. My heart was pounding in my chest. When she finally walked in, her expression brightened for a moment upon seeing me, but it quickly shifted to confusion as she noticed the serious look on my face. "Hey, Mark, what's up?" she asked, her voice casual, but I could hear the slight tremor underneath. "I need to talk to you," I said, holding up my phone, the photos of her and Brad still fresh in my mind. "I saw you today." Her face paled as the color drained from it. "Saw me? What do you mean?" I didn't mince words. "You were at the bar with Brad, Lisa. I have pictures. Don't lie to me this time." The confrontation was explosive. Lisa's denial was swift and vehement, but I pressed her, each question like a hammer striking a nail. I demanded to know how long this had been going on, and the facade she had maintained began to crumble. Under pressure, her excuses turned into desperate half-truths, and I could see the panic in her eyes. "Mark, it's not what you think. We were just talking," she pleaded, but her words rang hollow. "Talking? Really?" Because it looked a lot like more than that, I shot back, my voice rising as anger bubbled to the surface. "You've been lying to me for months." The emotional turmoil was unbearable. I was fighting for clarity in a world where trust had become a mirage, and all I had left were the shards of our once happy life. My heart ached for the love we had built, but it felt like sand slipping through my fingers as her excuses continued to pour forth. "I just needed someone to talk to, Mark. You've been so wrapped up in work," she finally admitted, her voice breaking. He was just there for me. "Just there for you," I echoed incredulously. "Is that really all this is?" And then it hit me. The weight of her betrayal felt heavier than I could have imagined. The emotional impact of her infidelity clawed at me, twisting my insides. I felt like a stranger in my own home, battling the reality that everything I thought I knew was a lie. The confrontation ended with Lisa storming out, leaving me alone with my thoughts, reeling from the fallout. I realized then that the decision I had to make was bigger than just dealing with her infidelity. It was about securing Ryan's future, ensuring that my son wouldn't have to bear the brunt of his mother's choices. I was determined to take control of my life, to ensure that Ryan had the best possible opportunities, even if it meant sacrificing my own happiness for the time being. I had a plan, forming in my mind, and it was time to execute it. The days following that intense confrontation were chaotic. Lisa had moved into the guest room, but I could still feel the tension thick in the air. We passed each other like strangers in our own home, exchanging terse greetings that barely masked the animosity simmering just below the surface. Ryan, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing around him, continued to be the shining light in my life, grounding me as I navigated this emotional minefield. I spent countless nights lying awake, my mind racing with thoughts of betrayal and revenge. The anger was almost overwhelming, but it also sparked something in me, a resolve that I hadn't known I had. I was not going to let Lisa's indiscretions destroy our family, nor was I going to allow her affair with Brad to dictate our future. I needed to think strategically. As I stewed over my next steps, I began to focus on Ryan's baseball prospects. He had been playing in Little League for a couple of years, showing promise, and I knew how much he looked up to Brad. Brad had become his coach and mentor, and I figured that, if I played my cards right, I could turn this situation to my advantage. I started to do some research on scholarships for young athletes, particularly in baseball. I reached out to a few local programs and coaches, gathering information about various youth baseball leagues and the scholarships that could be available for talented players. The idea of getting Ryan into an elite program that could provide him with exposure was appealing. It would not only give him an edge in his future endeavors, but it could also serve as a way to separate him from the influence of Brad. I was determined to steer Ryan away from any ties that could link him to the man who had betrayed me. One evening, after Ryan had gone to bed, I called a local youth baseball league that specialized in training young athletes. I explained my situation to the coach, and he encouraged me to bring Ryan in for an evaluation. The excitement bubbling inside me was palpable. This was my chance to ensure that Ryan had a future free from the complications of his mother's actions. The next day, I discussed it with Ryan over breakfast. "Hey, buddy, how do you feel about joining a new baseball team? They have some really great coaches who can help you get even better," I asked, trying to gauge his interest without revealing too much. "Really? Can I still play with my friends?" he asked, his eyes lighting up. "Absolutely, it's just a different opportunity to learn and grow," I assured him, my heart swelling with pride at his enthusiasm. After some discussion, Ryan was eager to go, and I couldn't help but feel a surge of hope. I knew that this decision would be pivotal, not just for Ryan, but for our family as a whole. I needed to ensure that he was on a path that would keep him away from the toxic environment created by Lisa and her affair. As the weeks passed, I continued to gather evidence of Lisa's affair. I discovered more than I had ever anticipated. One day, while cleaning out the garage, I stumbled upon an old box of Lisa's things. Among her scrapbooks and memorabilia, I found a series of love letters exchanged between her and Brad. The words were laced with passion and intimacy, and as I read through them, my blood boiled. This was more than a fleeting affair. It was a full-blown emotional entanglement. Each letter felt like a dagger digging deeper into my heart. I couldn't believe that the woman I loved had written such things about another man. It was clear to me now that this wasn't just a physical fling. It was something much more insidious. I made copies of the letters and stored them away. They would serve as a reminder of the betrayal that had shattered our marriage. The day of Ryan's evaluation at the new baseball program arrived, and I felt a mix of pride and anxiety as we drove to the field. I watched him warm up, swinging his bat and throwing the ball with enthusiasm. The coaches were impressed with his skills, and I felt a sense of relief wash over me. This was exactly what I wanted for him, an opportunity to thrive outside of the shadow of his mother's choices. After the evaluation, the head coach approached me with a smile. "Your son has great potential, Mark. We'd love to have him on our team. He's got a real knack for the game." I felt elated, but I also Understood that this was just the beginning. I needed to make sure that Ryan continued to excel and that he was distanced from Brad. It was time for me to step up as his father in ways that I hadn't before, to ensure that he was supported and guided through this journey. Later that evening, I confronted Lisa once again. I laid out my plans for Ryan's new baseball team, and while she feigned enthusiasm, I could see the flicker of irritation in her eyes. "You're just trying to keep him away from Brad, aren't you?" she snapped, her tone defensive. "No, Lisa, I'm trying to give Ryan the best opportunities possible," I replied firmly. "You made your choices and now I have to make mine. I will do what it takes to protect our son." The resentment between us hung thick in the air, but I stood my ground. I felt empowered in a way I hadn't before. I was no longer just a passive victim in this situation. I was taking control of our lives, ensuring that Ryan had a future that was bright and free from the chaos that Lisa had created. As I lay in bed that night, my mind racing with plans for the future, I realized that I wasn't just seeking revenge. I was reclaiming my power as a father and a man. The emotional battle was far from over, but I would fight for Ryan's happiness with everything I had. I was ready to take this fight to the next level, and I would make sure that he had the best shot at a life that was filled with love, opportunity, and a chance to succeed, far away from the shadows of his mother's betrayal. With Ryan officially signed up for the new baseball team, I felt a surge of determination. Each practice became an opportunity not only for him to develop his skills, but also for me to become more involved in his life. I found solace in the routine, spending evenings at the baseball field, watching him run drills and cheering for him as he hit home runs. It was a welcome distraction from the chaos at home, and it also filled Ryan with joy and confidence. But Lisa wasn't taking this shift quietly. The more Ryan excelled, the more agitated she became. I could see the frustration etched across her face during practices, particularly when she would show up unannounced, arms crossed, glaring at me as I interacted with the coaches. It was clear that she felt threatened by my involvement, but I refused to let her disrupt this new chapter in Ryan's life. One evening, after a particularly great practice, Ryan came over to me, flushed with excitement. "Dad, did you see that catch I made?" He beamed, his innocence shining through, and I felt a rush of pride. "Can we practice more at home?" "Of course, buddy, we'll hit the backyard when we get home," I replied, ruffling his hair. I looked up to see Lisa standing a few feet away, her expression darkening as she watched our interaction. "Mark, can we talk?" she said, her tone clipped, drawing me away from Ryan's exuberance. I nodded, bracing myself for another confrontation. We stepped aside, and she wasted no time getting to the point. "You think you're doing this behind my back, don't you? You're trying to turn Ryan against me by dragging him into your little baseball fantasy," she accused, her voice rising. "It's not a fantasy, Lisa. This is about giving Ryan the best opportunities. You can either support him or watch him thrive without you," I shot back, my patience wearing thin. "Stop using him as a pawn in whatever revenge game you're playing. You're being unreasonable," she yelled, drawing the attention of other parents nearby. "Unreasonable? I'm the one fighting for our son's future while you're busy sulking over your own mistakes." I snapped, unable to keep my anger in check. I could see the hurt flash in her eyes, but I couldn't muster any sympathy. The truth was, she had put us in this position, and I was done playing nice. "Mark, you need to back off. I'm still his mother," she said, her tone shifting from anger to a desperate plea. "And I'm still his father," I countered, my voice steady. "It's my job to make sure he has every chance to succeed, even if that means steering him away from you." As I walked away, the conversation left a bitter taste in my mouth. I knew she was struggling, grappling with the reality of her actions, but my focus had shifted. I was no longer part of a couple. I was a single father fighting for my son's future, and nothing would deter me from that goal. The following weeks continued to unfold with Ryan thriving in his new environment. He was making friends on the team and receiving compliments from the coaches, each little victory boosting his confidence. I started to notice that he was happier, more alive than I had seen him in months, and that joy became my fuel. But Lisa's anger was simmering just beneath the surface. She became increasingly passive-aggressive, making snide comments about my parenting and questioning my decisions. One day, as we were packing up to leave after practice, she cornered me in the parking lot. "Do you really think you're going to take him from me?" she asked, an edge of desperation in her voice. "I'm not trying to take him from you, Lisa. I'm just trying to give him what he needs," I replied, trying to keep my cool. "By keeping him away from me, that's not what he needs." "You're being selfish," she shot back, her eyes flashing. "Selfish? I'm protecting him from the fallout of your actions. You made this bed and now you need to lie in it," I said, my voice firm. Lisa's face twisted in anger, but this time I stood my ground. I was no longer the man who would let her manipulate me with guilt. I had a son to think of, and my resolve was stronger than ever. As the baseball season progressed, I made sure to keep my focus on Ryan and his future. The new coaches recognized his talent, and they encouraged him to try out for a competitive league. The possibility of a scholarship loomed closer, and I couldn't help but feel hopeful. We were both pushing ourselves harder than ever, and I was proud of him. But deep down, I was also aware that the fallout from Lisa's affair was far from over. I began to prepare myself for the inevitable, an escalation in her attempts to interfere. I knew she wouldn't just sit back and watch as Ryan thrived in an environment where she felt alienated. One evening, after another successful practice, I received a phone call that would change everything. It was the head coach of the competitive league. He offered Ryan a spot on the team, and I felt a rush of excitement but also a knot of anxiety in my stomach. This was the moment I had been working toward for Ryan, but I knew it would also push Lisa over the edge. "Hey, buddy," I said, kneeling down to Ryan's level as he finished packing up his gear. "Guess what? You made the team." His eyes widened with disbelief. "Really? Really? You're going to be playing at a whole new level?" I replied, grinning ear to ear. Ryan jumped up and down, his joy infectious, and for a brief moment, all the chaos melted away. In that moment, I felt a wave of hope wash over me. I was doing the right thing for him, and nothing could take that away. But as I watched my son celebrate, I couldn't shake the feeling that the calm before the storm was settling in. I sensed Lisa's resentment brewing beneath the surface, and I knew it wouldn't be long before she tried to retaliate in a way that would test my resolve. I had to stay vigilant and prepare myself for whatever came next. Ryan's future was on the line, and I was ready to fight with everything I had. The days following Ryan's acceptance into the competitive baseball league were a whirlwind of excitement and planning. As we celebrated his achievement, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I was fully committed to supporting him and making sure he had every opportunity to thrive. But I also felt the tension building with Lisa, whose resentment was palpable. As I anticipated, she wasn't going to let this go without a fight. One evening, just as we were preparing for Ryan's first practice with the new team, I received a text from Lisa. "We need to talk about Ryan's baseball. You're not making decisions without me." The message sent a jolt of irritation through me. I didn't respond immediately, wanting to keep my cool. Ryan was buzzing with excitement, and I didn't want to taint that with the drama of adult issues. Yet I knew I couldn't ignore her forever. She was becoming increasingly desperate, and her jealousy was clouding her judgment. That evening after practice, I agreed to meet her at a nearby cafe. As I walked in, I saw her sitting at a corner table, arms crossed, a scowl etched on her face. I had hoped to maintain a civil conversation, but her negativity was palpable. "Mark," she started, her voice tight, "this is getting out of hand. You're acting like I'm not a part of Ryan's life anymore." "Lisa, this is about Ryan's future. He's excelling and I want to support him in every way possible," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "You're using this as a way to keep him away from me," she accused, her voice rising. "You think just because you're playing the good dad it makes you better than me? It does. Better than you. That's not what this is about. I'm trying to make sure Ryan has the opportunities he deserves. Remember, you're the one who chose to have an affair. This is the consequence of your actions." Our conversation escalated into a heated argument. I couldn't believe how stubborn she was being. It felt like she was attempting to manipulate the situation to make me feel guilty for wanting what was best for our son. I could see the anger and desperation building within her. "Mark, I'm still his mother. You can't just decide everything," she shouted, drawing attention from other patrons. "Then start acting like a mother, support your son instead of trying to sabotage him," I shot back. With those words, her demeanor shifted. The anger faded into something more desperate and sad. "You're right," she said quietly, her voice dropping. "I messed up. I never wanted it to come to this." I was taken aback by the sudden shift. Was this genuine remorse or just another manipulation tactic? I felt a flicker of sympathy, but it quickly faded. I couldn't let myself be swayed. I had a responsibility to protect Ryan. "Lisa, I know you're struggling, but you need to understand that I'm not going to back down. Ryan is my priority, and I won't let you undermine that," I said firmly. The rest of that evening felt heavy with unresolved tension. I knew I had to prepare for whatever Lisa had in mind. I felt like I was walking a tightrope, balancing the need to keep Ryan safe while navigating Lisa's erratic behavior. The following weeks brought even more challenges. Ryan's practices became more intense, and he thrived in the competitive environment, but I could see Lisa's frustration growing. She began showing up unexpectedly at practices, sulking in the bleachers, and throwing me dark glares. It felt as though she was waiting for the perfect moment to unleash her fury. Then came the day I had dreaded. I received a call from the head coach of Ryan's new team. He wanted to discuss something important regarding Ryan's participation. My heart sank as I listened to him explain that Lisa had contacted him, expressing concerns about how Ryan was being coached. She claimed I was overstepping my boundaries as a parent and that Ryan needed to have a say in his sports activities. The coach was trying to be diplomatic, but I could hear the underlying tension. "Mark, I think it might be good for you both to sit down and discuss this. It's important for Ryan to have support from both parents." I felt my blood boil. Lisa was trying to manipulate the situation again, and I wasn't about to let her. Absolutely not. "Ryan is thriving here, and I won't allow her to sabotage his success," I said, my voice shaking with anger. After hanging up, I knew I had to confront Lisa once and for all. I texted her asking her to meet at the same cafe, but this time I was determined to lay everything on the table. When we met, I took a deep breath, ready to confront her. "Lisa, I found out you spoke to the coach about Ryan's participation. I'm not going to allow you to interfere with his opportunities. He deserves better than this," I said, my voice steady. She looked taken aback, clearly not expecting me to confront her so directly. "Mark, I just want to make sure he's happy." "You're being unreasonable," she retorted, but I could see the cracks in her facade. "Happy? You think you're doing this for his happiness? You're trying to control everything because you're scared of losing him. You need to stop." Her eyes narrowed, and I could see the anger bubbling beneath the surface. "You think you're the only one who wants what's best for him. I'm his mother," she yelled. "Then act like one," I shot back. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of our words hanging in the air. I could see the realization dawn on her that I wasn't going to back down. This was a fight for Ryan's future, and I was ready to do whatever it took to protect him. After a long pause, Lisa finally spoke. "I'm scared, Mark. I didn't mean for it to turn out this way. I just don't want to lose him," she admitted, her voice cracking. "I get that, but you need to face the consequences of your choices. You can still be a part of his life, but you have to support him, not sabotage him." As our conversation continued, I could see a flicker of understanding in her eyes. I wasn't completely convinced that this was the end of her manipulations, but I felt like I was finally breaking through the wall she had built around herself. But even as I felt a glimmer of hope, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that she was still plotting something that could jeopardize everything I had worked for. I needed to stay vigilant. The fight was far from over, and I wasn't about to let my guard down. Ryan's future depended on it, and I was prepared to face whatever came next. The tension between Lisa and me hung in the air like a storm cloud, but after our intense conversation at the cafe, I felt a tentative sense of hope. She seemed to grasp the gravity of the situation, but I knew too well that old habits die hard. I was prepared for her to revert to her manipulative ways at any moment. As Ryan continued to excel in his new team, the atmosphere at home remained charged. Lisa attended practices more frequently, and while her attitude mellowed somewhat, I could still see the jealousy lurking beneath the surface. I kept my guard up, knowing that she might strike at any moment. One evening, as I was tucking Ryan into bed, he looked up at me with wide, innocent eyes. "Dad, do you think Mom will come to my game on Saturday?" I hesitated. I had tried to shield him from the tension between Lisa and me, but I could see the disappointment in Ryan's face when I didn't respond right away. "I don't know, buddy. I hope so," I finally said, hopping to keep his spirits high. "Can we call her?" he asked, his voice filled with hope. "Sure, let's give her a call," I replied, feeling a knot of anxiety in my stomach. I didn't want to put Ryan in the middle of our conflict, but I also didn't want to deny him the chance to connect with his mother. As I dialed her number, I felt a mix of apprehension and hope. The phone rang, and when Lisa picked up, her voice was cheerful, almost too cheerful. "Hey, Mark, what's up? Ryan wanted to see if you could make it to his game on Saturday," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. There was a pause on the other end, and I could practically hear her weighing her options. "Of course, I'll be there," she finally said, her voice bright. I wouldn't miss it for the world. I hung up feeling a strange mix of relief and unease. Part of me was happy for Ryan, but the other part of me was wary of Lisa's sudden shift. I couldn't allow myself to forget the betrayal that had rocked our family. The day of the game arrived, and the atmosphere at the field was electric. Parents gathered, kids ran around, and Ryan was buzzing with excitement as he donned his uniform. I felt a swell of pride as I watched him warm up with his teammates. He was in his element, and nothing could ruin that for me. To my surprise, Lisa arrived early, her face beaming with enthusiasm. "Look at our boy," she exclaimed, and for a moment it felt like a glimpse of the family we used to be. I wondered if perhaps she had turned a corner after our conversation. The game kicked off, and Ryan played like a star. He hit a home run, and the crowd erupted. I felt a rush of joy for him, but I also kept a close eye on Lisa, watching her interactions with other parents. I noticed her chatting animatedly, laughing as if she were the proud mother she should be. But as the game went on, I couldn't shake the feeling that her presence was more of a performance than genuine support. She would cast glances my way, and I could see her weighing her next move. After the game, Ryan was on cloud nine, and I was thrilled to see him so happy. As I wrapped my arms around him, I caught sight of Lisa approaching, a tight smile on her face. "Great game, Ryan, you really knocked it out of the park," she said, and for a second I saw the spark of pride in her eyes. "Thanks, Mom, it was so much fun," Ryan replied, and I felt a pang in my chest as I watched him light up. But then I noticed Lisa's gaze shift towards me. "Mark, can we talk for a second?" she said, her tone suddenly serious. I tensed up, ready for another confrontation. "Sure," I replied, trying to keep my composure in front of Ryan. We stepped aside, and the tension was palpable. "I need to discuss Ryan's future," she said, her voice low. "I've been thinking about how to better support him, and I want to be involved, really involved." I raised an eyebrow, skeptical. "Really? You mean after everything that's happened?" "Yes, I realize I've made mistakes," she admitted, her expression earnest. "I want to make it right for Ryan's sake. I don't want to fight anymore. I just want to co-parent effectively." The sincerity in her voice surprised me. I wanted to believe her, but I also couldn't forget the damage that had been done. "I appreciate that you want to be involved, but this isn't just about wanting to be a mother when it's convenient for you," I replied carefully. "You need to show Ryan that you can be reliable." "I will, I promise," she said, her voice tinged with desperation. "I'll prove it to you. I just need the chance." I took a deep breath, weighing my options. I wanted to protect Ryan, but I also knew that keeping Lisa out of his life entirely could backfire. "All right, let's take this one step at a time. But understand this. If you cross any lines or try to undermine me again, I won't hesitate to fight back," I said firmly. She nodded solemnly, and as I stepped back to rejoin Ryan, I could still feel the weight of uncertainty in my heart. The weeks that followed were a delicate balancing act. Lisa made an effort to attend Ryan's games and practices, and while there were moments of tension, she seemed more committed to being a good mother. I remained cautiously optimistic, but I kept my guard up, aware that old habits die hard. Ryan continued to thrive in his new team, and I found myself more comfortable in my role as a father. I learned to celebrate his victories without letting Lisa's presence overshadow our bond. The experience had taught me a lot about resilience, the complexities of love, and the importance of prioritizing my son's future. As I reflected on everything that had transpired, I realized that I had emerged stronger from the chaos. I was no longer just a passive figure in my marriage. I was a father who held the reins, making decisions to protect my child. In seeking to ensure Ryan had the best opportunities, I had begun to reclaim my identity as a man, not just a husband. In the end, while the scars of betrayal would always remain, I found peace in knowing that I was doing everything in my power to create a positive environment for Ryan. I had fought for his future, and no matter what lay ahead, I was ready to face it, armed with love, determination, and a fierce resolve to protect my son at all costs.